Okay, it is 6 p.m. and I will call this meeting of the Lunenburg Town Council to order. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And with that, I'll look for a motion from council to approve our agenda. Moved by Councillor Sanford, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Are there any additions or deletions to note? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion's carried. That takes us on to the meeting minutes of May 24th and June 7th. If I can get a motion to approve those as circulated. Moved by Councillor Ernst, seconded by Councillor Birtles. That was a second. Yeah. Any errors or omissions to note? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. That takes us on to public hearings, presentations, and questions. We have two public hearings tonight. The first one is related to proposed noise bylaw amendments, and I will pass it over to staff to outline the process prior to our beginning the public hearing portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Your Worship. A public hearing provides members of the public with an opportunity to learn about a proposal and make their views known to council. To adopt or amend a bylaw, a public hearing is required under the Municipal Government Act. So the process this evening, a presentation will be made on the subject of the hearing by staff, and council members may ask questions. There may or may not be a presentation by a proponent. This will take place in the second one tonight, and council members may ask questions. Advanced submissions from the public, if received, will be acknowledged. The mayor will open up the floor for public questions, and then council will officially close the public hearing. They may proceed with the decision at that time later in the agenda this evening or defer it to a future meeting. So rules of conduct for this evening for anyone wishing to speak: state your name and civic address for the minutes. Be respectful of others' opinions. Speakers are limited to one presentation, which is a maximum of 10 minutes. Council members may question each speaker. Comments and questions by the public are to be directed to the mayor, who is the chair. And once the public hearing is closed, no further questions or comments on the matter will be received. For those of you watching on Zoom, if there are attendees on there, once we're into the public hearing, the raise hand will be enabled. So you'll be able to click on the raise hand icon and you'll be entered into a queue to speak, and I'll be able to activate you to be heard as directed by the mayor. To comment by text, you may type into the chat function and staff will relay it to the mayor. Those functions will only be enabled during the hearing. When they're turned off, the hearing is closed. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. So the first is the proposed noise bylaw amendments. I'll turn it over to staff to present that for 10 minutes if they have a presentation.
Thank you again. The Town of Lunenburg noise bylaw was enacted in November 2002 and has not been amended since that time. The town has a full bylaw and policy review scheduled for 22-23. MC Advisory being contracted to carry out this work, which will begin in the fall of 2022. In March, the town was notified that a request from the town to amend the provincial summary offense ticket regulations to include offenses under the noise bylaw was approved by the Attorney General and Minister of Justice. The public was notified of the changes at that time, and other questions about the bylaw overall were raised at that time. These proposed amendments deal with short-term solutions to concerns raised by the community about the 20-year-old noise bylaw in advance of the full review. These draft amendments will deal with certain targeted changes only. The three changes are as follows. I can flip this page. So there's one item on page 5 of the bylaw, which is section 13. It is a revision of the penalty, just to indicate the provincial direction of what that has now changed to. One section has been added under Schedule A, activities prescribed at all times. There's been a private fireworks ban due to concerns expressed about noise and safety. And the other, oh God, these pages are sticking. And the other two changes are just to adjust the evening quiet hours from a half hour beyond sunset to a fixed time. This is more predictable and may remove the need for certain exemption applications. That time has been tentatively set for 11 p.m. And with that, are there any questions?
Any questions of council at this stage? All right, seeing none, I will open the floor for anyone who would like to come and speak on the noise bylaw only at this stage. Juan?
I'll skip the thank yous. Fawn Creaser, 22 Young Street here in Lunenburg. I read all 186 pages today of the agenda, and it struck me regarding the noise bylaw. I also am part of a community group that's trying to increase housing in the town. And so I thought, how does this affect density when you have noise and you have more people coming? And we also have tourism, and we also have a very active, social, wonderful town that does all kinds of things. How do you balance all that out? So for example, in today's package, I was reading, we have the King's Hotel, which is really coming along beautifully, and they have a cafe in the front, which is wonderful. And I can see in the summer that it could be out on the street. And then I read a little farther and it talks about easements and how those work in the town. And as I was reading those, and I was just trying to find it, there was something in there about establishments being open until 2 a.m. And I thought, whoa, for $100, you pay a fee and you get an easement where you spill out into the street. And that can very much change how a neighborhood feels, looks, sounds, works when you're living there. And then further along, I see that where the town is looking to sell Tannery Road, which is a commercial property, which could be also the same, a neighborhood cafe or pizza shop, which would very nicely also spill out into the streets. So I guess I'm trying to make a point of, in terms of our planning department, how you decide or how you balance that out in a town such as ours, where it is difficult to balance all that kind of thing out. So if I could just ask a question, Your Worship, of the planning department, how does that get weighed when things like easement requests come up? Yeah, how does that get weighed out?
So the question with respect to the noise bylaw, which is what we're discussing now, I'll ask Arthur to respond to anything that you've noted.
It's probably an unfair question, Arthur.
Well, the noise bylaw is a separate bylaw. It'd be regulated by the town and enforced by the town. It's totally separate from the encroachment license permits. If there is a time frame up to 2 a.m., that's just the regular operations of any store or restaurant. So I don't know what to say about that. If a use does disrupt the public and it violates the noise bylaw, then that'll be enforced under the noise bylaw.
I guess the B part, I guess there's a B part to that. When things such as easements are, when requests come in, is the noise of them considered when they're being granted?
No, that's not one of the criterias for reviewing or permitting an encroachment.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Fawn. Anyone else looking to speak to the noise bylaw? Going once, going twice. You can, I'm sorry, if you want to add, you can come up to the mic. And please just give us your name and
Sure, I'm
address.
Cindy Dial, 29 Falkland Street. So just to Fawn's point, I think it was a really good one. Maybe there could be something in the granting of easements whereby if a particular establishment, if there had been complaints about noise and if they had broken the noise bylaw and received a fine, perhaps the town would be less likely to grant them permission the next time they wanted permission. Does that make sense? So that it's not just a case of, well, it's no problem, we'll just make noise and it's worth it because the fine is only so many dollars. Maybe if after a certain number of fines, the town decides, well, maybe that's not the best one to keep granting permission for. That's just a point I wanted to make.
Thank you, Cindy. Any further comments? Going once, going twice. All right. I will look for a motion from council to close the noise bylaw public hearing portion of the meeting. Moved by Councillor Ernst, seconded by Councillor Sanford. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. That public hearing is closed. That takes us on to the heritage application for the King's Hotel public hearing. Staff can just reiterate the conduct, and I believe this time we'll have a presentation from planning staff, then a presentation from the proponent, and then open it up for the public. Is that correct? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may get my PowerPoint presentation brought up. And I'd like to thank everyone that came out to this public hearing for the King's Hotel. I just want to go through the general rules of conduct again. We have a podium here. We ask presenters to come up and state their name and address, and so it can be clearly identified in the minutes. We ask that you be respectful of others' opinions, and speakers will be limited to one presentation. Unless called upon the chair for further comment, speakers are limited to 10 minutes so that all may have an opportunity to participate. I outline a public hearing outline. I do have a small presentation, and then we'll ask the proponents of the project to make a presentation, and then we'll open up the floor for public input at that time. And then following the public input, there will be a motion to close the public hearing, and no further comments can be received after council closes the public hearing. Just want to go through the process that was involved that got us to this point. Council passed first reading on April 12th. We advertised the first advertisement on May 11th. The second advertisement was placed on May 18th. And here we are on June 14th for the public hearing. The following steps after council's motion, if approved, then it will be sent to the province for their review, and then approval advertisement will be placed in the paper outlining the right to appeal to the Public Utilities and Review Board. Next slide, please. The owners of the Lunenburg Arms Hotel located at 94 Pelham Street have made an application to Lunenburg Town Council to build a new King's Hotel on the site of the original King's Hotel, which was demolished in the 1950s. The site currently functions as a Lunenburg Arms parking lot located at the corner of Duke and Pelham Street on lands known as PID 600-61199 and PID number 600-61181. The site is located within the Old Town Heritage Conservation District and is therefore subject to the Heritage Conservation District Plan and Bylaw. Pursuant to policy 4.6.2 of the Heritage Conservation District Plan and part 4.8 of the Heritage Conservation District Bylaw, council shall consider new commercial buildings through a public hearing process. I just provided on the next deck photos of the historical King's Hotel. And on the following slides, I have provided the design concept by the proponents. And at this time, with the mayor and council's permission, I'd like to hand it over to the proponent to do a presentation of their deck as well.
Okay, just quickly, are there any questions of council at this stage before we do that? Seeing none, we'll hand it over to the proponents for 10 minutes.
Hello, good evening. Is it okay?
Stand by. I'm
Okay
just
to start?
realizing I don't have your deck.
Oh, dear.
Just a moment.
We have a jump drive here.
Does that work?
This isn't part of the 10 minutes now, is it?
No, we will comp you the time.
It's okay. I'll wait for it to come up and then I'll think out the 10 minutes.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yes, my name is Brian McKay Lyons. I'm an architect, interim planner. I have an office at 160 Montague Street in the B2 Lofts building that we built there a couple of years ago, representing the client, Richburg Management. And Root Architecture in Halifax is our partner firm on the design. It's an honor to be engaged in this urban infill project in the Old Town Lunenburg. It's an opportunity to contribute to the fabric of the UNESCO World Heritage Town. The site, next image, please, is vacant parking lot, as Arthur pointed out, at Pelham and Duke, original site of the original King's Hotel. The site is composed of 3 original 18th century Lunenburg town lots. It's located across the street from the existing King's Arms Hotel. The renovation in addition to the Lunenburg Arms Hotel, the existing one, will be another part of another submission. But I just wanted you to know that what we're doing in the hotel, what we propose to do in the hotel, we plan to also do something similar with the renovation of the existing so that they are well integrated together and integrated into the streetscape. Next one, please. So, oh, and I should say the project meets all of the development standards in the new Lunenburg Town Plan, including building height, setbacks, uses, lot coverage, lot sizes, bicycle parking, all that stuff. The program for the new hotel is 41 rooms, a street front cafe, and a hotel lobby. Parking has been removed from the proposal and will be provided outside of the old town, served by a shuttle service. Next one. Oh yeah, this is good. Okay, so we started by looking at the immediate neighbors. The one on the right is a building that I own. Actually, it's the oldest house in town, arguably. I think everybody agrees with that. And the one on the left is directly in line with the new proposal. Pelham Street was always regarded as Lunenburg's Georgian streetscape, characterized by 1.5-story buildings on the downhill side of the street, 2.5-story buildings on the uphill side of the street. If you go to the next one, please. Now, there's lots of Georgian streetscapes around in the Maritimes. This is a beautiful one in Halifax with truncated gables and the dormers. And this has been a major precedent for us in our design work. So the existing hotel vacant lot interrupts the pedestrian experience, and we've been putting uses on the street to invigorate that pedestrian experience. Next one, please. So the old hotel with a latter-day addition, and then the next one, please, is the hotel, the original hotel, which we've used exactly as a form precedent for this. So we've taken the yellow house that Brian Arnott and his wife owns adjacent and this, and we just merged them. So next one, please. So this project follows the 2-story scale of the Georgian uphill side of the street eave line. It's the same eave line as the original King's Hotel, 2 stories. Now here we have 2 rows of Georgian dormers, reflecting those of the neighbor, a 12-tall pitch roof, 2/2 vertical punched windows, common in Lunenburg. Next one, please. Okay, just quickly through this. Eave line, dormers, mass, storefront, plan, ground plan, upper plans. Keep going, please. Elevations showing the relation to existing buildings. The storefronts that we're using are really the typical 6-pane Lunenburg mercantile storefront, 19th century storefront, like we have in our own architecture office on the right there. So we've literally replicated that. Next. Woven Corners is actually a 1750s house that I own, but the woven shingle corners. So the whole project, next please, the whole project will be clad in 4-inch to the weather natural cedar shingles, not just the walls, but the roof and the dormers and everything. So it's completely cedar shingle clad property. You'll see that you'll see in other views that there are these mechanical chimneys that refer to the 3 original town lot spaces. Okay, next. So you can see here, if you go back one, sorry. Go back one, please. Yeah, you can see the relation just lower than, yeah, there. It's just lower than the building opposite. Next one. It's the shop front. There's a lot of talk at the earlier public hearing that I was at with a pitchfork, not a pencil. I prefer a pencil. The architects don't like carrying pitchforks, but there was a lot of talk about the enlivening the streetscape, and I think this is going to do it. The developers have been very good to work with in all of these regards. Next one. Cafe, next one. Hotel lobby, next one. Lobby again, next one. So here you have the picture of the proposed scheme, the 2-story eave next to, and the 45-degree pitch roof and the dormers, just more or less like the original hotel with the shop at the corner and the whole thing. Next one. You'll see at a later time the plans for the renovation of the existing. Next one, please. Including the spa. Trying to bring the 2 projects together, but that's another story. Next, please. I said to Andrew, too many people in these renderings, it looks too noisy. It's a little noisy there. Next one. Yeah, so we'll bring the existing hotel out to the street too, is the plan. Next one. Next one. So there are lots of examples of gambrels, and they would meet the zoning. Next one. So we did, and that's what we did on our own project down the street. Next one, please. And we compared the massing. They both meet the zoning, but the developer didn't want the extra 16 units and the bulkier gambrel shape. The developer and everyone else, wants the lower scale project. So we were very happy about that. Next one. So, yeah, a typical developer thing, you come to the thing and you say, oh, it could have been a lot worse. So next one, please. And yes, it's actually one of the neighbors that suggested the truncated dormer, the truncated roof to take 4 feet off the height of the building, which I think was a really good suggestion. So we did it. Next. Okay, that's it. Did I make 10 minutes?
With 2 to spare.
Whoa. All right. Well,
And I'll
thank
say
you.
that the thing I love about the renderings is the infrastructure looks so good, and I wish it was that simple in real life. So are there any questions of Brian at this stage? Councilor Bertle?
Thank you for the presentation. I just have a quick question. You mentioned about parking is going to be outskirts of town and it's people are going to be shuttled. So where are you looking to do the parking?
I think the developer would have to answer that. I know that it's an ongoing discussion and they're looking at several sites. So I'm not sure where.
Okay. And I guess then where the shuttle be parked?
Beg your pardon?
I was just curious where the shuttle would be parked during the day.
Do you want to answer that?
It would be in a spot in front of the hotel, but it's not.
Because that's currently a paid parking meter right now in front of the hotel.
We have a spot.
Okay. Any further questions of Brian at this stage? Okay, seeing none.
Thank you.
You're off the hook. All right, that'll take us on to the open portion of the public hearing, and I will open the floor to anyone who would like to come up to the mic. I will once again remind you to state your name and civic address before you begin, and each speaker will have 10 minutes to offer remarks. If anybody would like to come up. Robert?
Robert Young, 225 Dufferin Street, and I'll drop this idea on there. I would love to see this hotel be powered by geothermal energy. You think that can be done?
We can explore that.
Yes, would be probably the most prestigious hotel in the country, and you would charge easy an extra $100 a night for each unit, and that's the way I was thinking of it. and it's huh? And and it's clean energy also, instead of bringing in dirty energy from Saudi Arabia or wherever we bring it in from. So that's my emphasis, geothermal. And they have the old school in Mahone Bay has gone geothermal. It's the Mahone Bay Center, and I was out there when they were setting it up. I don't know how it works at all. So anyway, that's something I would push for. We get lots of free publicity on it anyways. Okay.
Thank you, Robert. Anyone else? Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is James McCarrick. I live at 1455 Oakland Road. And through the mayor, I have a question for the architect, who I'm very glad to hear is the architect on this project because of his reputation. But my question to you, sir, is looking at the drawings, the renderings, it looks like many of the ornamental architectural design features of the original King's Hotel have been stripped away. And the design of this new version is very much a modernized version of what might have been a Georgian style or a Victorian style or some other older, more authentic style that exists here in this wonderful town. So that's a long-winded way of actually saying, why not design something that truly does match that original architectural style rather than design something that I would think you would describe as being complementary to the older buildings in this town, but still a modernized version.
Yeah, some of the trim is not there in the scheme. The casings on all the windows are 4-inch casings that you would see all over Lunenburg. The older the architecture in Nova Scotia, the more modern it looks because the more austere it is. And that woven corner thing, that's a 1600s thing. The really ornate stuff was 19th century, not 18th century. But we're inspired by the UNESCO's Venice Charter, which actually, yes. And it argues that new buildings in UNESCO towns should be subservient to their historic neighbors, but also be of their own time. And the reason UNESCO does that, and the person who writes those rules is a friend of mine, is that if we do fake history, if we actually literally copy it, you won't know what's real history and what's not anymore. So UNESCO is very clear about that. And it's fair to say that we're inspired by the 1700s, classically inspired, stripped down stuff, like my daughter's house in Kingsburg that I showed. But overall, our architectural goal is to help to make Lunenburg more like itself, not, to be subservient and quiet, piece of fabric, not to stand out. So tough for a modern architect, I have to tell you, to do the wigs and codpieces, to do all the ornament, because we agree with UNESCO that buildings have to be respectful and of their own time at the same time. I don't know if that won't maybe satisfy you as an answer, but it's an honest one.
Thank you, Brian. Ollie?
Oliver Osmond of 93 Buena Vista Court, which Robert, I'm sure, would like to be told has a geothermal heating system. I'm also a member of the town's Heritage Advisory Committee. I very much welcome this proposal. And, when I contrast our situation tonight with a few months ago when we were looking at something else proposed for this site, and there was a lot of opposition to that. Brian and I both spoke against it. It's really good to see a much more constructive possibility. I've just got two concerns about what I think is otherwise an excellent proposal. We've already had mention of the parking situation, and that's included not just in what's been said tonight, but in the material provided to us. But it's not actually a feature of, I think it's attachment B, which is referred to in the motion, which you're likely to have before you later this evening. And it does seem to me it would be advisable to insert such a solution to the parking as a condition of approval. It would be very difficult indeed if somehow that all disappeared off the table and the council was no longer in a position to impose that as a condition, because it does appear that if that wasn't a condition, there could be a very great difficulty with an enlarged number of hotel rooms at this location and the existing parking being lost. I mean, I think it's very much better to build a building than have an empty lot or empty 3 lots for parking, but that needs to be incorporated as part of a condition. My second concern is actually one aspect of the building itself, and I fully recognize the architectural authenticity of this feature, but I think it has a practical difficulty. There's no provision at all for any kind of guttering, and that's architecturally right. But I think it may be from a practical streets use situation, an unfortunate feature. We frequently get very heavy rainfalls here in this town. We had a little bit of it this afternoon. We had a huge amount of it Thursday night. There's a very large amount of roof in this building, and it will shed a large amount of water in a heavy rainstorm. And it's by no means clear what's going to happen to that water, where it's going to go once it hits the street, and what its impact is going to be on passers-by as they go past a building which will abut absolutely to the edge of the sidewalk. So I have a concern there, which I think probably needs to be addressed. It's both a concern about actually where the water sheds onto the ground, but it's also a concern about where the water goes once it hits the ground. And I do think that probably needs to be addressed. Otherwise, I think it's an excellent proposal.
Thank you, Ollie. Anyone else who'd like to come up to the mic? Going once, going twice. Okay, I'll look for a motion to close this second public hearing of the evening. Moved by Councillor Sanford, seconded by Councillor Duggan. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried and the public hearing is closed. We have no correspondence, petitions, or proclamations consideration. That takes us on to unfinished business, of which the street encroachment bylaw is the first item. Staff have presented this and it has come to us before for second reading and is here for the second time with non-substantive amendments. If there's anything staff would like to say with respect to changes and then we'll open the floor for council questions. Arthur.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to provide some background, council held a public hearing on May 10th to consider a new street encroachment bylaw. Concerns were raised regarding the length of time of encroachment may occur and issues pertaining to who might have first rights for an encroachment license, particularly with regards to a pedestrian bypass encroachment. The encroachments are related directly to the abutting property owner. The abutting property owner may, under the bylaw, apply for an encroachment upon the town street directly in front of their property. They have no rights to any portion of the town's right-of-way which directly abuts an adjacent property owner. Considering this, each property owner maintains their own rights with regards to their ability to apply for the public realm space directly in front of their property. The original proposed bylaw, as presented during the public hearing on May 10th, enabled applicants to expand beyond their frontage provided they had written permission from the abutting property owner. However, upon further review, this may prove to be problematic as owners may change during the lifespan of the encroachment agreement. In light of this, this provision has been deleted in the attached draft before you this evening. This is considered a non-substantial change and would not necessitate another public hearing. An issue does occur under the proposed provisions of a pedestrian bypass encroachment. To limit the impacts on the pedestrian sidewalk as well as the impacts associated with the loss of on-street parking, the previous bylaw required a separation distance of 200 feet between pedestrian bypasses. This provision leaves out the possibility of those properties along the 200-foot stretch to have the same rights to develop a similar pedestrian bypass. Staff is unable to suggest an alternative solution that would be fair to all users. And due to these concerns, coupled with the built environment of Lunenburg's narrow streets and the impacts on street parking spaces, it is recommended that this section, and it was the old section of 3.18, dealing with pedestrian bypasses, be deleted from the proposed bylaw at this time, as outlined in the revised street encroachment bylaw before you this evening. Staff would like to revisit pedestrian bypass at a later date when further information becomes available, such as the proposed parking strategy study. Staff feels that this would also be classified as a non-substantial change. The proposed street encroachment bylaw submitted during the public hearing of May 10th provided for building access encroachments to be valid for not more than 10 years in sidewalk cafes, sidewalk sale areas, sidewalk furnitures, and landscape encroachment licenses to be valid for a period not exceeding 5 years. That was outlined in part 5.6 of the proposed bylaw. The 10-year limitation for building access encroachment is consistent with the existing bylaw 65. Sidewalk cafes and sidewalk sale areas and sidewalk furniture and landscaping features were regulated previously by the land use bylaw without a time frame limitation. However, staff feels it is reasonable to require these types of licenses to be renewed after 5 years. It is recommended that there be no change in this regard as outlined in the revised street encroachment bylaw before you this evening. Therefore, it is proposed that council consider the rescinding of bylaw number 65, a bylaw respecting street encroachments for building access, and substituting therefore a new street encroachment bylaw as outlined in attachment A of the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arthur. I keep cutting you off, Arthur. I wonder if there's a third mic on somewhere. Okay, never mind. Are there any questions for Arthur at this stage? Councillor Hobbs.
Thanks, Arthur. Through the chair, do we have any idea at this point, given the changes now, where we're omitting the pedestrian bypasses, how many businesses will be impacted or be allowed to take advantage of this change of this encroachment bylaw?
Through the chair, the exact numbers pretty much unknown, but we do have roughly anywhere between 10 and 20 applications per year.
Okay, and I guess for the chair again, those would normally just be in the old town downtown core, I would assume. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. There might be a few in Newtown for existing built encroachments on the street, but mostly because of our compact downtown and their zero setback requirements. You know, most of those encroachments are within the old town part of Lunenburg.
Okay, and when this last came to council, we had quite a discussion about the duration. We talked about the term. 10 years for accessibility seems to make sense. That falls in line with what the provincial regulations are. I'm curious, we batted around terms as short as a year. How did we arrive at 5 years for business reasons? Why is that? Why did staff deem that an appropriate length of time to put a restriction on?
Well, we considered as staff whether it should be 10 or 5 years. We thought 5 years was reasonable. It costs $100 to enter into an encroachment license. You know, businesses do put sufficient funds into tables and chairs and landscaping features under the old bylaw. I wouldn't want them to lose their investment, you know, if they have to reapply on, say, a yearly basis. So I strongly feel that a year is not an appropriate time frame to do it. I think the businesses as well as staff's administration are just simply too busy to administer this type of bylaw on a yearly renewal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harbison. Any further questions of Arthur at this stage? Seeing none, there is a draft motion provided. If it's anybody's pleasure to move that as written, moved by the Deputy Mayor. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Harbison. Is there any discussion or debate? Oh, Councillor Sanford, sorry.
I'm just thinking earlier to the input that we received from community, and I'm wondering about the noise as it relates to the activities brought on through the encroachment. So I'm wondering is it appropriate that it would be written into this that the granting of the encroachments takes into consideration the current noise bylaw, whatever that is at that particular time. And then to the second point that was raised by community, if there are, and again, would it be appropriate to put this in that were there X number of violations of other town bylaws that they would then lose the right of the encroachment? Does that make sense? I'm just
So
thinking
yeah, my guess is there's some confusion about how these two bylaws interact, and
Okay,
I'll try to take it. And Arthur, you correct me if I'm wrong at any point.
thank you.
Businesses can be open later than the requirement for quiet under the noise bylaw, presuming they don't violate the requirement,
Yeah.
right? So as long as things are contained such that it wouldn't generate a complaint. I suspect that that would be fine, and I suspect that was the 2 a.m. reasoning. Correct?
Correct. Right at the top of my head, I honestly don't remember the 2 a.m. being
Yeah.
a portion of the, but
So they're really two separate bylaws for two separate issues, right? And the timing is just, it's about openness of a business, I presume.
that is correct. Like,
Yeah.
the operation of, sidewalk cafes is associated with the hours of the store. We don't want the cafe on the sidewalk to operate when the store's not operating. It's supposed to be accessory to the actual retail store operation. So when the main store closes, you expect the cafe to be also closed, correct?
So what if we have a business that involves, let's just say a pub as an example, right? Where they're open and there might be, again, I'm thinking about the noise, right? Going later into the evening. Like, how does that fit in this? Are they able to conduct that business to 2 a.m. or whatever that late time is? Or do they have to end that business in relation to the noise bylaw if it ended at 11?
So the noise bylaw, the quiet hours provision of the noise bylaw would come into effect at 11.
Okay,
And then it would be up to the policing provider to, I presume, repeatedly fine the business until they complied with the noise bylaw, but that doesn't affect the encroachment.
no.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. That takes us on to the second reading of the noise bylaw. Had the public hearing, we've had the staff report. I'll leave one more opportunity for questions if there are any. Seeing none, there's a draft motion provided. If it's anybody's pleasure to move that, moved by Councillor Ernst. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bertels. Is there any discussion or debate? Councillor Halverson.
Just wanted to point out, I don't think it was mentioned when we went into the public hearing, but we did receive several pieces of correspondence from residents. So I just wanted to acknowledge that there was other feedback, and you both, and all with some very constructive information that we're going to take into consideration as we vote here. So just wanted to make sure that was noted.
Yeah, and I'm sure staff will reach out to those parties to let them know if they want their feedback noted as written submissions for the public hearing in the minutes. Okay, any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, the motion is carried. All right, that takes us on to the certificate of appropriateness application for the King's Hotel proposal. Again, one more final opportunity for any questions. I know yours isn't a question, you're just eager to move it. Yeah. All right, seeing no questions, the deputy mayor has moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ernst. Is there any discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, the motion is carried. And given that everyone in the audience is probably here for that particular motion, I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute recess so that people can slip out and reconvene at around 7 o'clock. Okay, we are resuming after our recess. We are at item 8, committee meeting minutes, recommendations, reports, and notices of motion. There is one item which is for information, and that is the Project Lunenburg Steering Team meeting notes of May 18th. That takes us on to new business 9A, and the first item is a capital planning update from the municipal engineer and project manager, which is for information, and I will turn the floor over to her.
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff have formed a capital planning committee to provide support to the capital and operating budgets by ensuring that the approved projects are being attained. As of June 2nd, of the 66 projects identified by staff for the 22-23 year, 36 are currently in progress and 2 are completed. A breakdown of the projects is provided in the report. Actual cost versus budget on capital projects will be provided through the financial variance reports that will begin for the year after we have completed the first fiscal quarter. This report is for council's information only.
Thank you, Lisa. Are there any questions at this stage? I just have 2, if nobody else has any. One, from the report, like I see when your execution dates are and things that are started. I'm just wondering, can you give me a sense of, are we on time and on budget on all of these?
Some of them are. I can fill in more detail if you'd like and share that with.
Well, I'm trying to get a sense of, based on current projections, what would be accomplished at the end of the year, or if where we're at with that. Just a rough sense. It's fine.
Well, like everything that we have started, we're on schedule for. And so actually I can include that as sort of like an extra column maybe for the next update, if that would work. Because I could go through all of them now, but be better to.
That's why I flagged. And just in the sense of, like, I know we're grappling with long-term capital planning and building our 5 to 10 year capital plan. And I'm just wondering, just in general terms, how that's coming along.
Yeah, that's so that outside of sort of this committee. Yeah, we are, especially with Tyson on board now. And we actually received the draft of the GIS, the first go of the GIS data. So we started the sort of the long-term planning.
Okay, those were my only 2. Oh, I seem to have sparked some follow-ups.
Well, my brain
Deputy Mayor.
brain only works when somebody nudges it. And yeah, the mayor's comment there on the, time and budget related to that. And I just remember, Kevin, we had just a discussion like our meeting on Mondays, and he did kind of indicate to us that there are some things that are likely not going to, just out of sheer, time and labor, it's not going to happen. So, and that's okay, right? And that's, I think, maybe what we're just looking at, maybe a sense of, this is really not likely, or, or potentially may not happen, right, at this point in time.
Oh,
Yeah, the acting CAO for the first interjection of her tenure.
Thank you. I guess that's certainly something we can add to the next report, but I think that you'll find, as Ms. Kendall has indicated, that sort of some of those projects that are on track right now, perhaps designed for sidewalks and those sort of things, that there will be further reports as sort of the summer comes up, because there are some that are potential at risk. But we could identify those in the next report, just to sort of flag them in a different color or some sort of notation for the potential risk.
Thank you. No further questions? Not even Halverson? Geez. Okay. Okay, Councillor Devon.
Is it on? Okay, I'm just looking at the manhole cover upgrades. So I'm assuming that those are the ones that stood too high off of the road. And are all of those being replaced, the ones that were causing issues?
yeah, that's right. The biggest issue actually for us was the plows were kind of clipping on them. But yeah, the intention is to we actually have them ordered and they're here. So we have to do that in-house, the work, but all of them will be replaced.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. One last time, any further questions? Knew it was coming.
You did start it. You did start it. I did notice one of the items, the replacement was, we saw the replacement pickup was received. I believe, was that the one that was meant to replace the van? And I just happened to notice the van is still parked outside the community center. I assume are we selling that? And when will that happen?
So I guess we had delayed, that was the one that was to replace the van. However, the one that we ordered last year, a brand new one back in the fall, like September, was to replace a different vehicle. That one had not come in. We actually just recently canceled that order and sourced another vehicle that we hope to get next week. And that will then actually facilitate the van, going as surplus and that sort of thing. So we delayed that a bit.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could just add, I think we have until the end of June for the van for like our inspection and stuff. So we hope to have the new truck here shortly.
Just in time production here at the town of Lunenburg. Any further questions? All right, I'm not letting that go too long this time. Seeing none. That takes us on to new business item B, Blue Nose Drive Sewer Line Tender Award. I will turn it over to staff to summarize their report.
Thank you. As council is aware, in the 22-23 capital budget, $335,000 was approved for the Blue Nose Drive Sewer Line project. The tender closed on May 31st for the design, supply, and installation of the cured in-place pipe to successfully rehabilitate the sewer main. We received one tender submission. The submission met the requirements of the tender. The proponent has experience on several similar projects with adequate experience to complete the scope of the work of this project. The tender submission is from Eastern Trenchless with the tendered price of $298,500 excluding HST. Thus, the revised project budget is outlined in the report, and the revised budget is $375,000, including contingency. There is a draft motion at the end of the report for council's consideration.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions at this stage? Councillor Halverson?
You're probably not gonna be able to answer this, but I'm just curious. It's a large job. Why do we only have one response? Is it just because there's so much work, or there are only so many people available who can do the work? I love the idea of getting multiple tenders, so we really get a sense of, are we getting the right value for our money?
Actually, the scope of this, it's not conventional construction, and there's only very few companies that actually do this work. So our understanding from CBCL, who was the consultant who helped us with this, that this is the main company in the Maritimes who does the trenchless work.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, there's a draft motion provided. Is it anybody's pleasure to move that as presented? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Duggan. Is there any discussion or debate on the motion? Seeing none. Oh,
I realized I should ask this question beforehand. It's just about the money. I know it looks like it's a 375. It looks like we're padding the contingency is the difference in what you're asking for. And then there was some talk about getting some provincial funding. When will we know about that?
So that application went in at the end of or mid-May, I believe. I am hopeful that we'll hear about that pretty soon. There were some inquiries from the province, but just about the project, but no final response yet. It is the contingency obviously is there in case there's something that comes up during construction. It may not be expended, and so we may be very close to the original budget. But as soon as we do know about the provincial award of that grant, we'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. That takes us on to the potential sale of land, 17 Tannery Road. There's a staff report, which is hopefully shorter than the motions that are there. And we will turn it over to staff and or contractors to present that report.
Thank you, Your Worship. The town is investigating the possibility of divesting ownership of PID 600532261, known as 17 Tannery Road, the old Newtown School, referred to as the Annex. The town has obtained clear title to the land through a private member's bill. As there are public services along the front of the property, it is recommended that these services be included within the street right of way, and it's shown as parcel A on a plan of subdivision prepared by Bergen's Survey Limited. And this one's dated May 12th, being plan number 20,153-A, which we showed councilors earlier this evening. A resolution of council is required to incorporate these lands as part of the public street. Please refer to the town solicitor's report in the motions attached. The process will begin with the transference of these front lands to Tannery Road. Once this step is completed, the remaining lands will then be migrated. After migration, the subdivision of the remaining lands will be approved, creating 2 lots with frontage on Tannery Road, known as Lot TOL3 and Lot TOL4, as shown on the plan of subdivision Plan B. 1 lot will include the annex building, and the other lot will include the lot containing the town's services. And I'd just like to refer council to the 5 draft motions included in the report for your consideration this evening to be able to eventually sell 17 Tannery Road, which is lot TOL3 on the plan of subdivision. Thank you.
Don't like that word eventually.
Oh, sorry, our solicitors here this evening that may have some additional comments.
Okay, Pat?
Just very quickly, yes, as the way the report is formatted, the schedules referred to in the draft motion are part of my report, and so they're incorporated in the motions. And the plans that are referred to in the motions were in my report as well, but in reduced form. The resolution is intended to refer to the full-size plans. We just this afternoon, we were talking hopefully the Registrar of Deeds will accept the subdivision approval and plan. And if not, we will have to come back, but there was some question about that, but we are proceeding as if it is full steam ahead. I would note that in Plan C, and we looked at the easements. One of the easements is an electrical easement, and because we have contracted out maintenance of our electric lines to Nova Scotia Power, they require a certain width of easement, and so that one will go through the building to be sold. But we're going to set it up so that that the building would be allowed to remain unless it's wholly destroyed or removed. Otherwise, the motions are all there and would be dealt with in sequential order.
Thank you, Pat. Is anyone's pleasure to move the draft motions as presented? Moved by Councillor Duggan, seconded by Councillor Ernst. Any discussion, debate, or questions? Councillor Sanford.
I'm assuming you're referring to all questions or debate or about all of them. I'm just wondering, for me personally, I'm okay moving from motion 1 to 5A, and I'm wondering at that particular point, and perhaps while motions 1 to 5A, if they are approved, we should be obtaining and considering public feedback before we move into motion 5B. And I say that in the context of a couple of things. Number one, we are talking about community assets. Secondly, it was mentioned in the comprehensive community plan about obtaining and considering public feedback when we are looking at surplus assets. And then the third thing is our interim CAO had recommended public input at one of our meetings. I can't remember which one. So I'm just thinking, here's an opportunity. Right now, we don't have a policy that speaks to this per se. I just think it's an opportunity for us to start and practice that in the context of the surplus assets.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Any further discussion or debate? Councillor Hobbs?
I'll follow in with what Councillor Sanford said. I'd be happy to support a motion if the councillor would like to make it, indicating we would get some public feedback before we sold, or I don't know if it's best to have the public feedback. Yeah, I guess we have to have it before we decide to put it up for sale. So yeah, I would support a motion if the councillor so chooses to make it.
Okay, would you like to make that an amendment?
I would like to amend that, please.
Okay,
So I would like to move the addition of a
So-
motion. I don't know whether it would be 5A1.
well, I assume it would be 5B and then the 5B would be noted to 5C.
Okay,
To hold some sort of public engagement opportunity for that.
yeah,
We can leave it to staff to come up with some language. That is moved as an amendment to the 5 motions that are there and seconded. Okay, is there any discussion or debate now on the amendment? Deputy Mayor.
Well, I'm just wondering what we would hope to accomplish with a public hearing and selling the asset.
Well, I don't know that it would be a public hearing because a public hearing is a legal.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it would be a
well,
public engagement
well,
opportunity,
like,
yeah.
So what, like what are we looking for here, I guess?
it's not necessarily what we're looking for. It's what we may be missing. And again, we're just wanting to gather, so obtain and consider any public feedback. It's not to say that we aren't going to decide to move forward. It's just the opportunity for the community to be able to provide us with feedback, perhaps some things we may or may not have considered.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Anyone else like to weigh in? I sort of agree with the deputy mayor on this. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bertels.
I was just saying that I don't think we would need to have the public. They've already seen the agenda go out. If they had any concerns, they could have brought it forward at that time.
I sort of agree with the deputy mayor and Councillor Bertels. I do appreciate that we need to systematize the disposal of assets, and I'm looking very much forward to the disposal of assets policy coming forward. I can see opportunities for public engagement with, the disposal of lands, particularly residential lands. This particular disposal has been, to put it mildly, excruciating, and I am therefore not in favor of anything that would hold it up. So I am against the amendment. Any further discussion or debate? Okay, keeping in mind, we're voting on the amendment only at this stage. So those in favor of the amendment? Those opposed? Councillor Ernst, in favor? Sorry, I didn't see you there. So we'll note 3 in favor, 4 opposed. The amendment is defeated. That returns us to the original main motion, unamended, which has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or debate on that main motion? Seeing none? All 5. Yes, yes. On the book that Pat has provided us. Councillor Sanford?
Can we vote on them individually?
You can move to divide the question. Yes.
Okay.
Is there any particular way you'd like it divided? I assume 5 is the only one you're not comfortable with. Is that okay with everyone that we vote on the first 4 as a block and then 5? Okay, that's understood by staff. We'll take that as a motion by unanimous consent. So on the first 4 only, all those in favor? On 5A and B, all those in favor? We can, if you, I will take that by unanimous consent, yes? Okay, to divide that question, no problem. On 5A, all those in favor? Okay, on 5B, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, noting Councillors Sanford and Halverson in the negative. All right, moving right along. That takes us to Lunenburg Board of Trade Street Fest event permit application. Is there anything to note on this one from the staff perspective?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Board of Trade has submitted an application for their annual Street Fest for July 9th. The event closes part of Lincoln Street to feature live music, sidewalk sales, food and beverage, and kids activities. Town services are requested in kind, which we just have a little bit of feedback about. The closure of 3 blocks of Lincoln Street. We do have some questions for them regarding traffic control that we haven't yet been able to quite nail down. The electrical box that they mention here, the electrical box located in the parking lot, we can do. The electrical box next to the dollar store is not operational, so that's something we can't offer. I just wanted to flag that there are a couple of issues around the in-kind services. Thank you.
So are staff requesting a condition on the application here, or why is this being brought forward if it's not finished?
We're just asking for a condition that these in-kind services be ironed out with the Board of Trade.
Yeah, but if they're not ironed out now, then council doesn't know what it's approving and what it's not.
Okay, we could.
Is there time to defer this until July, or is this happening?
It's July 9th.
Oh, the 28th?
Yeah,
June the
we could
28th?
defer to the 28th.
Is that council's will that these things be worked out by staff before this be brought forward for the June 28th meeting? Okay, we'll take that as a deferral by unanimous consent. Yeah.
I'm curious. So they're looking for entire closure of the entire streets, so no vehicle traffic. I guess what else I'd be looking for is to know what are the provisions for getting emergency vehicles through? What are the provisions for accessibility, getting people into the streets? And we've been wrestling with parking issues for I don't know how long now. I did a quick count. That's 52 parking spaces we're closing, including the only town-owned parking lot in the center of town. So I'm just curious how we're going to get customers down there. So I would like to hear back from the Board of Trade on how they plan to do that. I mean, obviously we've talked about this at council before, and if they've got a solution, I would love to hear it, because I think it would be a great addition to have to our, like, this parking plan we're trying to put forward. So yeah, anything they can offer, I would really appreciate.
Councillor Halverson's comments are duly noted.
Thank you.
This will be deferred by unanimous consent until our June 28th meeting, and we look forward to what staff brings back after that. Next, we have the Cardiac Cycle Society of Nova Scotia's Heartland Tour event. There is a permit application related to that. If staff want to speak to that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just briefly, for some context, as there's not a lot of background information in the application. This is a charitable, charitable organization that organizes this tour to raise awareness of heart health and promote an active lifestyle. The application addresses the fact that the tour will pass through Lunenburg to the waterfront for lunch and then continue on. It is a very large group. Traffic is managed by the RCMP and volunteer marshals. No town services are required, and they will be providing an insurance certificate. Normally, something like this wouldn't come before council, but because it's coming through town is why it's here. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions to staff at this stage? Seeing none, is it anyone's pleasure to move the draft motion as presented? Moved by Councillor Sanford, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Is there any discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. There is no in-camera meeting tonight, and there being no further business before council, I declare the meeting adjourned at 7:23.